Under the hot lights, Jasmine Crockett goes first, unflappable, measured, determined to command the game from the first few minutes. But she never backpedals on expecting Candace Owens, with her measured tone and cutting sharp points, to intervene and slowly reverse the game. Candace not only stands rock solid in every statement, but also launches a barrage of evidence that cinches down every fair response. And then at exactly the right moment, she makes a cold, calculated statement, sending the whole room reeling. Before we embark on the story, say where you're viewing from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the new stories. Jasmine Crockett suddenly stiffens her position in her chair, not from nervousness, but precision. Her dark, cobalt blue suit is the type that commands attention. Seated across from her is Candace Owens, crossed legs, pointed smile, questioning eyes. They're being taped on Voice of America, a late-night program on the American View Network originating in Seattle. Famed for its pointed political commentary, Voice of America is not a forum for the establishment of common ground. It's where you stake your claim. The issue of the day is not unfamiliar. Race in America, criminal justice, partisan politics. Nothing different on the surface, but everyone makes a note when Candace Owens is present. It's not about the topic being debated. It's about control. Host Brown James gets underway. Congresswoman Crockett, you've made a strong case regarding inequality in the justice system, but many like Candace claim the system is okay, and race is simply made up as an excuse. Your response? Jasmine doesn't flinch. She stands firm, voice low and even. The problem isn't that race is talked about too frequently. It's that it's overlooked until someone pays the ultimate price. Candace gives a cold, confident smile, not to comfort, but to forewarn. Congresswoman, I believe it's irresponsible when politicians promote a victim mentality. That every negative that occurs to Black Americans is because of racism. That is not truthful. I'm living testimony. A few nods are seen off camera. That's how Candace always begins, setting herself up as the exception, and then attempting to eliminate the rule. Jasmine leans in slightly, a slight reflex under mounting pressure. You feel that systemic racism is overstated, Candace. Candace's smile doesn't falter. Absolutely. The facts don't lie. We have a record number of Black millionaires, our biggest stars, the strongest voices in entertainment and culture. They're not Black. They're celebrated. What we're witnessing is victimhood as currency. Brown James shoots a glance at Candace, sensing she's taking charge. Candace doesn't hurry. She stands, allowing the air in the room to change marginally, as though something has happened and no one is aware yet. She addresses Jasmine. That's a curious posture, Congresswoman, she states, because I read a public filing last night that says differently. A Dallas police brutality suit when you were a public defender. Silence. Not dramatic, merely straightforward. Candace flinches. What are you saying? She laughs out. I have no idea what you're talking about. Jasmine fixes her eyes, producing a neatly creased sheet of paper from her file's side pocket, filed in the Dallas DA's office. Candace goes on, You defended a Black man brutally beaten by the police, and you persuaded him to settle for a low figure rather than risking a trial. You didn't just file. You wanted it over fast. Am I wrong? Jasmine opens her mouth, but no words come. Brown James leans forward, visibly uncomfortable. Let's keep things respectful. Jasmine cuts in, voice still calm. This is respectful. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm asking how someone can spend years fighting for justice when she herself helped the system skate. The room's atmosphere shifts. The camera crew feels it. The producers feel it. Home viewers break from channel surfing. Jasmine tenses in her seat. Her jaw clenches for a fleeting moment, long enough for anyone listening to see. That was then, she finally speaks. I was a young lawyer at the time, But you were right to do so. Candace asks softly. Silence once more. Yes, I did what I believed was correct. But that is not the issue. That is precisely the issue. Jasmine interrupts, because the truth doesn't have an expiration date, but Candace Owens is just beginning to tug on the thread. And Jasmine Crockett has no idea how much more will be revealed. The quiet on set stretches a second too long. Jasmine fiddles with the mic clip on her lapel, not because it's malfunctioning, but to allow herself a moment to consider. Her smile, always on tap, starts to fail. This is not the play she had in mind. I think we're losing our way, she says, attempting to find balance. Bringing up my past as a young lawyer doesn't eliminate the bigger conversation about the way justice gets warped in politics today. Candace doesn't blink. In fact, that's the thread, Candace responds, her tone ice but piercing. You insist the justice system is just that individuals require personal responsibility. But when you were in the position, it was serious enough for you to persuade your client to abandon the struggle and serious enough for the city to compensate. Jasmine's mouth falls open to rebut, but Candace leans in softly and quietly. You told your client was beaten by the police, that the city failed to protect him, that he was living in fear. And you weren't mistaken, Candace goes on. But honestly, you didn't beat injustice by lying about it. You settled for it by admitting it. A muted hum breaks across the live audience, barely perceptible. But there, all the same. The host, Brown James, is taken aback. He looks at the producers off camera, then attempts to redirect. Okay, perhaps we should discuss present policy, Congresswoman Crockett. But Candace will not let him cut in. We are discussing present policy because of historic patterns. We cannot talk about justice if we ignore what happened in the past. That includes her history, Candace reiterates. Jasmine expels the air in a sharp exhalation as if the air is pushed out of her. You don't know me, she declares. I've heard what you've said, Candace says, and that's all it takes. Jasmine leans forward more rigidly, speaking more loudly. You're taking everything out of context. People mature. My opinions have evolved. I've discovered that too many people use victimhood to earn a living, and that stifles whole communities. But you never got past it, Candace retorts. You came from it. You used that to forge a career. And now, rather than helping youth get up for justice, you tell them they're making things up that once stirred you to action. The line hits home. Not only does the room feel it across each screen in the house, the audience feels it too. Jasmine rolls her eyes. She gives a dismissive laugh, but this time the smile is not genuine. You're attempting to cast me as a hypocrite because I don't run around upset about what occurred, she states. No, Candace responds, her tone unruffled. I am revealing people your narrative isn't what you're saying. You benefited from the very system which you now proclaim is fair. A beat. Then Candace addresses the audience, staring directly at the camera. Here's the truth. Injustice doesn't end just because Jasmine Crockett became a congresswoman. Pretending it doesn't exist doesn't help those still trying to graduate without discrimination, get a job without changing their name on a resume, or survive a police stop. Another panelist, a one-time Washington state senator, clears his throat, visibly uncomfortable. Perhaps we should cut to solutions, but the stage lights haven't moved. Jasmine attempts again. You think you're assisting people by having them feel victimized? I'm assisting them in claiming their power. Candace's voice doesn't ascend. She doesn't have to shout. No, you're assisting them to forget the price of that power. You remind them that the fight does not cease when you take the mic. You instruct them to cease complaining, yet you once cried out for justice. You were in the right. Candace goes on. You were in the right, but you lost sight of how it was the instant you held the mic. Brown James attempts to go to commercial, but the audible pause in his voice tells it all. He is aware this is the moment people will be talking about, but Candace is far from done. Not until she's made the contradiction so plain, no one can avert their gaze. The audience can't avert their gaze. Jasmine Crockett established her reputation on control. Her interviews are usually tight, strong, unflinching, unflappable. That's her reputation. Of the woman with an answer in every room. But tonight, the rhythm is off. Candace Owens doesn't try to shout her down, mock her, or turn it into a spectacle. She just stands on solid ground and points out that Jasmine isn't who she claims to be. Jasmine reaches for a statistic she's memorized 100 times. Black Americans make up just 13% of the population, but commit over 50% of violent crimes. That's not emotion. That's FBI data. Candace's head moves slowly in her direction, and this time there is an edge of ice in her voice. Serious? Carefully tossing around selective crime statistics as if they're the absolute fact. They're not selective, Jasmine snaps back, her tone cutting. They're facts, and they don't tell you how those numbers are gathered. Candace relaxes back in her chair. Police aren't neutral. Surveillance isn't neutral. Do you know how many crimes never get reported in affluent white suburbs because they get resolved quietly? But every crime in a poor black community gets written up, arrested, prosecuted. You know that you've read the same reports I have. Jasmine's voice becomes more acidic. You can't defend violence because it occurs in a specific region. Candace leans forward. Nobody's defending anything. I'm saying that the system doesn't treat everyone fairly, and you of all people should realize that. You experienced it as a young lawyer. For the first time on the show, Jasmine appears visibly shaken, not knowing what to respond with. She looks to the host, Brown James, but he simply stares back at her without saving her. Jasmine changes strategy. You know what's tiring? She asks to be informed. I'm not qualified to be a congresswoman, that I'm betraying my community just because I don't go around blaming everything on injustice. Candace jumps in straight away. No one's labeling you a traitor. I'm labeling you dishonest. There's a difference, Jasmine. Jasmine crosses her arms, leaning back. You think people don't have the right to feel differently? They do, Candace responds, but to stand on a national stage and sell your own experience as a way to eliminate the suffering of millions of others is not thinking differently. That is selling a lie with your name attached to it. Jasmine laughs derisively. I'm not selling anything. What about you? Books, podcasts, paid speeches? You're selling a brand. And your brand is that you didn't settle that lawsuit. You didn't need help. You didn't get hurt. Jasmine's jaw starts to twitch. Her foot begins tapping. The camera freezes a moment. Brown James interrupts. Let's change gears a bit. Number someone, Candace says firmly. Let's wrap up this point because it does count as something. The room falls silent once again, not uneasy, but exhausted. Each time you tell a black child they're making excuses, Candace explains, you're forgetting that once upon a time you did need someone to believe you, to take your client's fears seriously and act on his behalf. Now you tell people doing that is weak. Jasmine doesn't say, I'm not here to win an argument. Candace goes on, I'm here because too many people watching this show don't have anyone standing directly in their experience, and I won't allow anyone to erase that just because it makes a good headline. A pause. The studio waits with bated breath, not knowing what is going to happen. Then Jasmine ends the silence, not with a fight, but an evasion. At least I'm not crying on cue for pity, she says. The line gets it started. Candace laughs. Not sarcastic, not cruel, but the kind of laugh you let out when a person tells you they have nothing genuine left to say. I've never cried for sympathy, Candace says. Plain accountability. But if that's too much for you, I'll do it myself. But Jasmine has no idea. Candace still has one last card to play, and it's the card Jasmine Crockett can't shirk. She attempts to pivot in tone, sitting up straight, smoothing her dress, and turning to the camera as if stepping back onto home terrain. "I think we're witnessing performative politics at the moment," she says. Congresswoman Crockett obviously wants to be viral more than truthful. Candace's hand lies gently on her thigh. She doesn't flinch, doesn't shift, simply regards Jasmine like a person trying to clean the floor with the faucet still dripping. "You always say that I'm performing," she responds, "but tonight I'm asking the questions that you refuse to answer." No spin, no slogans. Truth only. Jasmine smirks, contemptuous. The truth is, individuals such as, "You need injustice to keep your career going." Candace does not turn to her. She fixes her gaze directly at the host, Brown James, then out into the audience. "Let me be clear," she says, her voice low but clear. "I didn't get elected by telling people they're victims. I got elected by saying they deserve better and fighting like hell to make sure they get it." Jasmine bursts in louder. "No, you campaigned on fear and division like so many others." And then the moment comes. Candace turns to her. Not sullen, not smug, just composed. "You can't redefine history because the cameras are turned on." The words sit like a foghorn in an empty harbor. Everyone hears it. Everyone stops. Even the cameras pause. Jasmine's lips open, then shut. For once, she doesn't have an automatic response. Candace tilts forward ever so slightly, voice firm. "You talked that client into taking the settlement because you were afraid. Because you were young. Because he was black and targeted. And that was real. His experience was important then, and it is important now. But what you're doing, denying it ever occurred. Denying you aided the system. That's not strength. That is denial, dressed as survival." Jasmine attempts to pivot. "Now I am not permitted to change my opinion." "You can," Candace responds, "but do not deceive people who are on the path that you once had to be guided on." Brown James is quiet. The other panelists are quiet. Someone slowly reaches for a water bottle, as if in fear that the noise will shatter the tension. Jasmine interrupts the silence again, her tone a little higher. "I'm not going to sit here and be accused of betraying my people." Candace arches an eyebrow. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm reminding you what responsibility does." Jasmine shifts, her laugh flat, more defensive now. "You know, I had enough of people trying to make me feel small." "You're not the first," Candace says softly. "I'm not trying to make you little. I'm reminding you that you're larger than this." The words are not a punch, but a mirror. For an instant, the face of Jasmine lights with a flicker, as if something slices through the armor. And Candace does not push farther. She allows it to settle. Brown James then clears his throat. "We're going to break for commercials in a minute, but before that, Candace interrupts, her voice edging up only just for the very first time. I need to say this to the home audience." She addresses the camera, not the studio, talking directly to the kitchens, living rooms, and break rooms of the nation. If you've ever felt your experience doesn't count, if they tell you you're seeing things they don't want to see, don't let them delete you. Don't let them mask the truth because it's uncomfortable to see. You exist even if the people in charge with the megaphone try to erase you. She breaks off, allowing the moment to breathe. The live audience at home gasps while Jasmine struggles to regain her pace. Things only get worse during the next few minutes. While the show goes to commercial, social media blows up. Clips of the confrontation fill timelines before the credits even start rolling. One of the control room personnel leaked an unedited raw cut. No editing, no cuts, just Candace Owens standing cool as Jasmine Crockett flailed trying to get out of trouble. That line went viral. You can't distort history because there's a film crew present. It struck like lightning, creating memes, GIFs, hashtags. Even normally, balanced accounts began sharing screenshots and snippets. There was no spinning it quickly enough to salvage the moment. Backstage, Jasmine paced down the hallway, her high heels now too constricting. Her assistant trailed behind, phone clutched, mouthing updates she did not request. "It's X top 5 across the country," the assistant muttered. "One clips already broke 4 million views." Jasmine said nothing. She was too busy reliving the moment in her mind, trying to identify where she lost control and where Candace had the upper hand. Meanwhile, Candace sat quietly in the green room. Her phone vibrated on the table next to her, but she didn't pick it up. She had nothing to explain. She didn't appear to argue. She appeared to tell the truth, and the country listened. Within 60 minutes, political pundits began weighing in. A prominent neutral radio host from an Oregon station stated, "Regardless of where you sit politically, Candace Owens did what we expect from every public figure. Arrive with facts and don't blink." Another who posted on X, "Jasmine Crockett encountered an opponent tonight who played outside of her rules, and it told. But the actual power wasn't in the pundits' reactions. It was in the everyday folks, teachers, barbers, students, parents, swamping the comment sections. I've followed Jasmine Crockett for years, and this is the first time I've ever seen her really shaken." Candace did not scream, did not curse, did not evade. She set the truth before us and let us observe who was squirming. She quoted, "What we've been waiting for somebody to say on national television for a long time." There was also sympathy, but not for Jasmine. Audiences remembered the Dallas police brutality case Candace referenced. Some uncovered old Texas stories. Others discovered past interviews, court records, even public filings. It all linked. Jasmine had assisted a client with reaching an agreement with the system, but now referred to it as personal responsibility. The pressure grew. That evening, Jasmine went on Facebook with a message. "I will not apologize for growing and promoting personal accountability. Yes, I handled a lawsuit as a young attorney, and I moved past it not by dwelling on it, but by refusing to let it define me." Some can't handle that strength, but the comments weren't as supportive as before. Thousands pushed back. "Growing doesn't mean erasing. Moving forward doesn't earn you a get-out-of-denying-the-truth-free card. You can't use growth as an excuse to deny the way you got there." Candace eventually put up something in her own words. It was short, no Jasmine mention. The truth doesn't require a headline, it requires someone to stand behind it. 4 hours since the show, Candace's clip exceeded over 15 million views on platforms. Even individuals who didn't see the show were quoting her. Backstage, producers nodded in subdued wonder. "I knew it'd go big," one said, "but not this way." Brown James, at the anchor desk, watched the footage, glanced up, and said what a lot of people were thinking. Jasmine brought the noise, but Candace brought the receipts. The debate reached each person in a different way, based on their political, social, or personal prism. But from all sides, one thing was certain. Candace Owens didn't only attack Jasmine Crockett. She revealed something more. In Chicago coffeehouses, Atlanta coffeehouses, Portland coffeehouses, and Dallas coffeehouses, people kept talking. The confrontation oozed off the screen and into the real world. A woman waiting at a bus stop in Oklahoma City said to a coworker she wasn't even mad. And that made it sting more. She just stood there as if she's done it 100 times because she has. To most of us, Candace wasn't arguing. She was experiencing what far too many have gone through. Being told injustice never occurred even as it happens. Being told to forget when wounds are still open. Being told they're seeing patterns others have learned to disregard. Candace did not arrive to play coy. She arrived to lay the truth on the table and let it remain regardless of who it offended. In Washington, D.C., members of the House noticed. Some colleagues phoned, others discreetly texted. A staffer from a neighboring district explained Candace didn't merely win a debate. She demonstrated responsibility with dignity. That's not common, and honestly, it's about time. Typically, TV political debates devolve into yelling festivals, wherein whoever yells the loudest or interrupts the quickest receives applause. But Candace did precisely the opposite. She slowed, rendered the room quiet enough for the truth to reverberate. A young black woman in Oakland shared a video sitting in her car, eyes tears-brimmed, voice unshaken. I tracked Jasmine Crockett for years, and I could never be at ease when she said folks like me were playing the race card. But listening to Candace mention that long-ago lawsuit, the ordeal Jasmine had attempted to hide, man, it felt like finally someone said something. We're not insane, we're not crazy, and we're not alone. That was the gist, not about destroying somebody. Candace wasn't trying to ruin anybody. She was trying to say that erasing the past doesn't fix it, and silence isn't peace. It's just a somebody who quit listening. The story resonated the hardest for those that work in classrooms, courtrooms, clinics, folks who witness patterns of injustice close up, where names get omitted on resumes. Voices get silenced in meetings. Consequences are relative to who's witnessing. The Memphis high school teacher wrote in her diary that evening, "My students always ask me if racism still exists. I used to evade the answer. Today, I'll show them the clip." It was important because Candace wasn't there to prove herself. She did not have to. She had shown up to hold firm as others wrangled over the truth and later tripped over it. The lesson had not been about sides, not left or right, Democrat or Republican. It was easier. If you've experienced something painful and then you deny it just to gain points, you are not tough. You're faking, and people notice the difference. Jasmine had strength. Sure, a platform, millions of followers. But that evening, Candace had credibility not derived from followers, but from consistency, from connecting the past to the present without ignoring the middle as if it never occurred. That's why it hit so hard. Because people didn't witness a takedown. They witnessed someone finally speaking the truth that was needed to be spoken, unflinching, not screaming, not making it entertainment. But one question remained, and it would determine how both were remembered after that evening. The storm had not dissipated, yet contrast was evident. Jasmine Crockett switched into high-response gear. She took to social media, released a podcast episode on the same evening, and released a barrage of X-posts to turn the tables. She labeled Candace Owens' comments performative politics, blamed American View Network for laying a trap, and cautioned followers that the truth is now dangerous to the left. But this time, something was different. The reaction wasn't the across-the-board rally she was accustomed to. Her fans were still boisterous, still dedicated, but subdued in their usual way, as if even they realized that she didn't exit the studio with a victory. More significantly, those who weren't her fans weren't accepting the spin. In the meantime, Candace Owens did not take a press conference, did not give 5 interviews, did not write all caps and share all compliments. She uploaded one picture herself, sitting on the Voice of America set, fingers lightly intertwined with 4 words, "Stand by the truth." No jabs, no hashtags, just the same equanimity that she contributed to the debate. The post conveyed another message, one that endured longer than the din. People reposted it with captions such as "Strength isn't volume" or "The adult in the room." She did not attempt to control social media, and in doing so, she did. There is something compelling about someone who realizes they don't have to yell to be listened to. And that is what Candace accessed. A quiet power, the kind that doesn't pursue the mic, but stands ready when it is handed over. Meanwhile, the debate over Jasmine's history became inevitable. Individuals uncovered documents of the Dallas police brutality case. She worked as a public defender. Screenshot of filings, witness quotes from the case, archived news stories, historic interviews, it all emerged. Not to embarrass her, but to remind the public this occurred. She did it. She experienced it. So why now deny it? The question reverberated in newsrooms and online forums. If you came to terms with the system in order to obtain justice, why advise others not to? For others, it was no longer about Jasmine. It was about individuals they knew IRL. The aunt who had instructed them to toughen up. The uncle who had said injustice was done. The teacher who had dismissed what they had heard in the hallways. Candace's words provided individuals with the vocabulary to resist. One woman blogged, "I was raised being told to just admit injustice made me weak, that if I just worked harder, it would go away." Seeing Candace call that out without apology, I felt like someone was finally standing up for 17-year-old me. But Jasmine just kept posting, kept typing, kept attempting to reframe, but her words no longer meant the same. Not once the public had witnessed the clip, watched someone peel back the mask calmly, clearly, and allow the unadorned truth to be revealed. There is a distinction between being heard and being remembered. Jasmine's brand had always been volume, provocation, veracity. But now individuals began wondering what's left when the noise dissipates. Candace provided the answer without ever stating it. Legacy isn't built in an instant, but in how you manage the instant. A debate coach at a high school in Tacoma played the video for her students and stopped when Candace uttered, "I'm not trying to make you small. I'm reminding you that you're bigger than this." She asked her students, "When it's your turn to talk, who do you want to be at that time?" Nobody chose volume. And so, as the headlines continued to spread, the hashtag cycled, one thing became clearer. Candace did not simply win an argument. She made a distinction between doing a thing and doing the right thing, and the crowd noticed. Even as social media hummed and her name topped the lists, Candace was aware that the ultimate triumph was not in the eyeballs. It was in the subtle change being made everywhere. It is easy to get swept up in these moments. Trends, trending hashtags, immediate responses. But what stuck with the public after the smoke had cleared wasn't Candace's clever zingers or her trending quote. It was the way she made the truth sound like something you could believe in again. In living rooms throughout America, parents played the clip with their children, not as entertainment, but as a lesson. A Cleveland dad stopped it mid-sentence, explaining to his teenage daughter, "This is how you stand up for yourself without lowering yourself." An elderly woman in Sacramento opened the phone clip saying, "She reminds me of how we used to hold our dignity, even when we were angry." That's what people kept talking about. Dignity. Not the polished for TV kind, but how Candace kept her voice steady when Jasmine tried to provoke. How she stood firm without raising her tone. How she faced contradiction with calm, making the audience reflect instead of shout. Even some of Jasmine Crockett's supporters began having quiet conversations. Not that they suddenly agreed with Candace on everything, but because they saw something undeniable, a mirror they didn't expect, a contradiction they couldn't explain. And quietly, something shifted. Not dramatic, not a wave or a movement, like a change in temperature. Slow, steady, real. A student at a Seattle college blogged, "I used to look up to Jasmine's confidence. Now I realize it was just volume. Candace taught me what true strength is when you don't freak out, no matter who's trying to rattle you." People weren't responding, they were thinking. That was the difference. Because what Candace did on that stage wasn't simply setting someone straight. She reminded others that it takes courage to stand with the truth, that calmly speaking does not indicate that you do not feel the passion, that you don't have to yell to raise the bar. And she did it with grace, with honesty, with impeccable timing, with quiet. When quiet spoke louder than anything in the room, that's what stayed. Weeks later, Candace's clip continued to be passed around, not because it was sensationalistic, but because it spoke. Others stood and watched it again and again, as if memorizing the sensation it put them in, reminding them that you don't have to be cruel to be direct, don't have to yell in order to be heard. You only have to stand in the truth and refuse to blink when they attempt to drown you out. That is exactly what she did.